Have you ever wondered why someone's words, a careless glance, or even silence can cut so deeply? Why is it that in a world of billions, one person's opinion can stir storms inside your mind? Anger, irritation, resentment. These are the shadows that steal your peace. But pause for a moment. What if nothing anyone said could touch the core of who you are? What if your inner world became untouchable, like a mountain unmoved by the wind? Imagine living in a state where people could mock, reject, misunderstand, and still you remain whole. This is not weakness, it is not indifference, it is power. The rare kind of power that belongs only to those who no longer allow their emotions to be governed by external hands. To be untouchable does not mean you never feel. It means you are no longer enslaved. And this is the path. Learning how to never get angry, never bothered, no matter what anyone else does. We live in a world where people mistake reaction for power. From childhood, many are taught that to be silent in the face of insult is weakness, that to walk away is surrender, and that only those who fight back have dignity. But in truth, anger is often nothing more than a leash tied around the neck of the mind. Someone pulls and you follow. The misconception is that defending yourself immediately and fiercely is a sign of strength, when in reality it reveals how much control others have over you. They whisper a word, and your peace shatters. They raise an eyebrow, and you feel the need to prove your worth. The illusion of strength is built on noise and speed, but real strength is quiet, measured, and beyond manipulation. Most people do not notice that by reacting to every word or gesture, they are surrendering their autonomy, allowing their emotions to be dictated by whoever knows the right button to push. When people believe that anger is a natural defense mechanism, they forget how vulnerable it makes them. Consider how easy it is for someone to destabilize you if all it takes is a comment, an opinion, or a rumor to stir your spirit. The misconception lies in glorifying emotional eruptions as if they are demonstrations of authenticity or passion. What is anger, if not evidence that another person has gained entry into the sanctity of your inner world? And what is irritation, if not proof that your peace is fragile, hanging by a thread controlled by someone else's choices? Imagine how weak a fortress would be if it collapsed every time a passerby tapped its wall. That is how most people live, reacting as if their value depends on the approval or disapproval of others. Philosophers and thinkers across time have warned us against this slavery. Machiavelli, for example, recognized that the true power of a leader did not rest on domination of others alone, but in the mastery of self. A ruler who cannot govern his own temper, his own impulses, is no ruler at all, for he is constantly at the mercy of those clever enough to provoke him. Emotional immaturity is the Achilles heel of so many who otherwise appear powerful. They walk into rooms commanding attention, yet anyone who knows how to pierce their pride can dismantle them within moments. The tragedy is not in the insult or offense given, but in the instant surrender of inner stability. To lash out in anger is to admit, even silently, that your sense of worth has been shaken. In the modern world, this misconception is further amplified by the way society celebrates outrage. Social media thrives on anger. Every platform rewards those who react quickly, loudly, and with great intensity. Entire movements are built on the energy of being offended. And while some outrage can lead to justice, most of it dissolves into chaos, leaving people drained and divided. In such an environment, many have forgotten the art of restraint. They see calmness as apathy, silence as guilt, and indifference as cowardice. Yet calmness is not apathy. It is precision. Silence is not guilt. It is wisdom. And indifference is not cowardice. It is freedom. Still, the world insists that to be unmoved is to be weak, while to flare up is to be alive. Nothing could be further from the truth. The psychological trap here is profound. When you allow another to provoke you, you become a mirror reflecting their will. You may believe you are defending yourself, but in reality, you are dancing to their tune. They insult, you respond. They push, you push back. They set the tempo, you follow. Your identity becomes reactionary, tied not to your values or clarity, but to the whims of whoever happens to challenge you. Anger then is not power, but a signal, an admission to the world that your emotions are easily accessed and controlled. It tells others exactly where your weak points lie. And the more you believe anger strengthens you, the more predictable and fragile you become, unable to distinguish between real threats and petty provocations. History is filled with examples of leaders, thinkers, and visionaries who collapsed under the weight of their inability to govern their emotions. Many wars, betrayals, and downfalls can be traced not to calculated decisions, but to impulsive reactions, to moments when anger silenced reason. And yet society continues to paint anger in the colors of strength. It is seen as masculine, as courageous, as proof of vitality. This is why so many defend it, claiming that without anger they would be trampled upon, unheard, unseen. But true authority does not need to raise its voice. True influence does not crumble under disrespect. Those who believe otherwise are trapped in the misconception that their dignity is externally assigned, constantly borrowed from others' recognition. The truth is, the louder you need to shout, the less control you truly have. Perhaps the greatest irony is that people who live enslaved to anger often justify it by claiming they are simply real or human. They argue that it is natural to react, that bottling emotions is unhealthy, that expressing rage keeps them honest. But honesty without discipline is chaos. Humanity without self-mastery is destruction. To accept anger as inevitable is to accept being a puppet to external forces for the rest of your life. The world will never stop testing you. There will always be critics, betrayals, misunderstandings, and provocations. If your response is always anger, then you remain trapped in a cycle that robs you of peace and blinds you to freedom. The real misconception, then, is not simply about anger itself, but about what it costs: your clarity, your independence, your sovereignty over your own being. Everyone remembers the sting of words that linger far longer than they should. You can go back to a moment when someone said something small, almost casual, yet it embedded itself in your mind like a thorn. Maybe it was a teacher dismissing your potential, a friend mocking your dream, or a stranger's comment about your appearance. Days passed, weeks even, yet their voice replayed inside you. They probably forgot what they said within minutes, but you carried it like a weight, rehearsing responses, imagining comebacks, burning silently with irritation. This is one of the most painful realizations in life. Often, those who disturb your peace walk away untouched, while you remain entangled in their shadow. And in that imbalance, you see how easily your inner calm can be stolen, not by force, but by words as fragile as breath. Think also of those times when someone misunderstood you deeply, twisting your intentions, assigning motives you never had. The frustration that rises in such moments can feel unbearable. You want to explain yourself, to clear your name, to make them see who you really are. Yet the harder you push, the more resistance you face, until it becomes clear that no explanation will satisfy them, and what remains? You exhausted, them unchanged. It is in these moments that many people experience their first taste of the futility of reaction. You realize that by pouring your energy into changing another person's perception, you handed them the keys to your well-being. It is not their misunderstanding that binds you, it is your need for them to understand. There is also the subtle pain of rejection, which often feels like a personal verdict on your worth. Perhaps you sought someone's approval, whether a parent, a partner, or a mentor, and instead received silence, disinterest, or outright dismissal. That wound cuts not because of the act itself, but because of what you tell yourself it means. You interpret it as evidence that you are less, that you are unworthy, that you must strive harder to earn validation. Yet over time, if you look carefully, you discover that rejection often says more about the one giving it than the one receiving it. Still, while you wrestle with the discomfort, your energy drains into anger, into sadness, into replaying the moment again and again. The other person continues with their life, while you remain haunted, chained not by their action, but by your reaction. Moments of humiliation are perhaps the most relatable of all. Someone points out your flaw in front of others, or laughs at your expense, and suddenly your heart races, your face burns, your pride screams for retaliation. You remember every detail, the tone of their voice, the smirk on their face, the laughter of those around you. Even years later, these memories surface uninvited, sparking the same fire inside. But if you look at them with clear eyes, you will see that the humiliation endured is not in the act itself, but in the endless replay within your mind. They may have forgotten, But you keep rehearsing as if keeping the wound open ensures your dignity survives. Yet all it does is deepen the cut, binding you once again to a moment that should have been left in the past. Transformation begins when you recognize the pattern, when you catch yourself about to surrender peace for the sake of proving a point. Maybe it happens during a heated argument when, for the first time, instead of shouting back, you stop. You let the silence hold. At first, the silence feels heavy, almost unbearable, but then you realize it is not weakness, it is clarity. The moment passes, and you are still intact. You walk away lighter, realizing that not every battle requires your sword. That moment is small on the outside, yet monumental on the inside. It shows you the possibility of living without constant reaction, of reclaiming the energy that would have been wasted on anger, and using it instead to strengthen your own presence. There is also the painful awakening that comes when you see how much of your life has been shaped by other people's opinions. You look back and realize how many decisions were influenced not by your true desires, but by the fear of ridicule or rejection. You studied a subject, not because it was your passion, but because you wanted approval. You stayed silent in moments of truth because you feared being judged. You lashed out in anger because you believed silence would make you small. Then, one day, perhaps in solitude, you realize that you have been living in chains made entirely of imagined eyes watching you. And in that moment, the anger you once directed at others transforms into a deeper reflection. How long will you continue living as a prisoner to voices that are not even yours? Social life itself offers endless opportunities for this awakening. Consider how easily people are pulled into arguments online. A stranger thousands of miles away writes a comment, and suddenly your peace is gone. You type, delete, retype, crafting the perfect response, as if the validation of someone you will never meet holds the key to your dignity. Hours are lost, emotions drained, over battles that carry no weight in reality. And yet, this cycle repeats daily, leaving millions exhausted by invisible wars. In these moments, the truth whispers quietly. It was never about them. It was always about you, your desire to be seen, your need to be heard, your fear of being overlooked. And once that is understood, the door to freedom begins to crack open. There comes a moment in every person's life when silence speaks louder than words. It may be during an argument, where you suddenly feel the pull to respond, but instead you pause, breathe, and let the silence hold the weight of the moment. At first, the silence feels unnatural, almost suffocating, as though you are betraying yourself by not reacting. But in that stillness, something unexpected happens. You realize the world does not collapse because you chose restraint. Your worth is not diminished because you did not defend it. Instead, you begin to sense a quiet current of strength running through you, a realization that true power is not in the clamor of response, but in the dignity of restraint. That is awakening, the recognition that you are not defined by every provocation, and your spirit is not a puppet dangling from the strings of others. The awakening deepens when solitude shifts from being a punishment into a sanctuary. Many fear being alone because silence reveals truths we avoid in the noise of others. But when you learn to sit with yourself, when you discover that solitude holds no terror but instead offers clarity, your relationship with the world transforms. You begin to see that loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is the ache of seeking outside validation, while solitude is the strength of finding enough within. In solitude, you meet yourself without masks, without the burden of performance, and you realize that much of your anger and agitation came from a life lived for others rather than for yourself. The scars you carry begin to look different too. Where once you saw them as reminders of weakness or shame, now you see them as proof of survival. Every scar tells a story of pain endured, battles faced, and storms weathered. They become symbols not of defeat but of resilience, each one whispering that you have endured far worse than the fleeting provocations of others. A careless insult cannot touch the depth of a soul that has survived heartbreak, loss, betrayal, and despair. Your scars become armor, not in the sense of hardening you against love, but in strengthening you against the trivial attempts of others to wound you. With this perspective, you begin to walk differently, calmer, slower, more rooted in who you are. Imagine yourself as a flame. A flame does not react to every gust of wind by collapsing or flaring wildly. It simply burns, steady in its nature. The wind may blow, but the flame knows its purpose is not to please the wind, but to continue shining. Awakening is realizing that you too are such a flame. People will try to blow you out, diminish your light, or stir you into chaos. But your task is not to obey their efforts. Your task is simply to remain what you are. This image of the flame becomes a guiding truth, untouchable, unwavering, alive on its own terms. You no longer waste energy proving your existence to others because your very being is its own proof. The awakening also shows you how rare stillness truly is in a noisy world. Most people are restless, endlessly chasing validation, endlessly responding, endlessly defending. But when you choose stillness, when you stand as a calm presence amidst the storm, people notice. Some will misunderstand it, thinking your silence is arrogance or indifference. But the wise will recognize it as depth. The deeper your roots in this stillness, the harder it becomes for others to move you. You realize that anger was never strength. It was fragility disguised. The stronger you become within, the less you feel the need to react without. Stillness, once feared as emptiness, now becomes the richest state of being. With this new strength comes a redefinition of worth. You stop measuring your value through others' acceptance and begin to recognize it as something intrinsic, untouchable, and complete. You see clearly that no opinion, no insult, no rejection can subtract from what is already whole. This realization liberates you from the endless cycle of proving, performing, and defending. You begin to carry yourself with an ease that is not arrogance, but quiet assurance. The old triggers lose their grip. The words that once pierced you now fall away like rain on stone, and as this happens, you feel a lightness inside. A freedom you did not know was possible. The awakening is not a single event, but a continuous unfolding, a lifelong practice of returning to your center no matter how the world tries to pull you away. Each time you refuse to give away your peace, each time you choose silence over fury, each time you recognize your scars as strength, the awakening deepens. It is not about building walls around your heart, but about expanding your capacity to remain whole no matter what comes. This strength is not loud, not dramatic, not visible to those who measure power by volume, but it is the kind of strength that cannot be shaken, the kind that radiates quietly and transforms not just your life, but the lives of those who encounter you. That is awakening, not a firework that explodes and fades, but a steady light that burns eternally. The greatest illusion of life is that freedom is something granted to you by others. People spend years chasing respect, approval, recognition, and acceptance as though dignity is a trophy someone else can hand them. Yet time reveals the painful truth. Even if the entire world applauds you, it will never be enough if you do not first recognize your own worth. And even if the entire world rejects you, you are not diminished unless you agree to hand them the power. This is the paradox. Those who live for validation are never free, and those who free themselves from validation can never be enslaved. Real freedom is not born when the world changes its opinion of you. It is born when you no longer need its opinion to feel whole. The revolution that matters most is not political or social, but personal. History books may celebrate battles won and empires built, but the deepest victory is invisible, the conquest of one's own mind. To never be angry or bothered is not to be apathetic. It is to have mastered the battlefield that most never even recognize exists. People look outside for enemies, blaming rivals, critics, and circumstances for their suffering. Never suffering, but the true enemy has always been within. The uncontrolled mind that reacts without clarity, that crumbles at every insult, that hands over its sovereignty at the slightest provocation. Once you see this, everything changes. You realize that the revolution you longed for was never out there. It was waiting quietly inside you all along. Every time you choose not to react, you are breaking chains. Every time you allow silence to carry your dignity instead of anger, you are rewriting your life. The transformation may not be visible to others immediately, but you will feel it in the stillness of your nights, in the lightness of your mornings, in the way you no longer carry the weight of unnecessary battles. It feels like breathing after holding your breath for years. It feels like returning home after wandering endlessly in foreign lands. This is the subtle but profound reward of inner mastery, the discovery that peace was not something you had to earn, but something you only had to protect. It is tempting to believe that if others respected us more, we would finally feel at peace. But true peace is not conditional. If your calmness depends on others behaving a certain way, then it is not peace at all. It is a fragile arrangement, doomed to collapse the moment life delivers its next storm. The awakening shows you that lasting peace must be unconditional, rooted not in circumstances but in choice. You may not control what others say, think, or do, but you can always control the space between their action and your response. And in that space lives all your power. In that space lives the freedom to rise above, to remain unbothered, to live untouchable. This journey transforms not only how you see yourself, but how you see the world. The same people who once irritated you become teachers, revealing the places where you still have work to do. Insults become opportunities to practice restraint. Rejection becomes a mirror reflecting your own dependency. Even betrayal becomes a lesson in how to anchor yourself deeper into your own worth. Life stops being a battlefield and begins to look more like a classroom. Every moment a lesson. Every encounter a chance to refine your mastery. And slowly you stop fearing the storms because you have discovered the stillness within that no storm can touch. As this strength grows, you begin to radiate something others cannot quite define. They sense your calm, your unshakable presence, and they are drawn to it. Some may envy it, others may misunderstand it, but the wise will recognize it as rare. Without ever raising your voice, without ever demanding attention, you become a light to those still struggling in the noise. You show by your being that anger is not the measure of courage, that reactivity is not the measure of authenticity, and that silence can be stronger than the loudest roar. This quiet influence becomes your legacy, touching lives not through domination, but through inspiration. And in the end, what remains is a simple truth. The real revolution is not to change others, but to transform yourself. To never be angry or bothered is not about building walls around your heart, but about opening it so widely that no insult can enter. It is not about becoming cold or detached, but about becoming so whole that you cannot be reduced by the fleeting judgments of others. The call is not to shout louder, but to live deeper, not to demand respect, but to embody dignity, not to win arguments, but to win yourself. This is the revolution worth living for, the silent inner transformation that makes you untouchable.